Welcome to Chicago Live on this Monday. The time is now 1 o'clock. We have a lot to get to today over the next 3 hours. But first, I want to run through a few headlines. Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse is facing a new lawsuit. 44-year-old Joe Belgio is claiming he was served contaminated oysters, exposing him to multiple food-borne pathogens. The lawsuit goes on to allege that as a result, he suffered cardiac arrest, a months-long coma, and permanent brain injuries. We have reached out to Gibson's for comment, but have not yet heard back. Later today on Chicago Live, we will be chatting with an oyster expert to share a little bit more about how this happens and the likelihood of this happening when consuming oysters. Also, fast food burger wars. Wendy's, a long runner-up to McDonald's, has lost its second place title among America's largest burger chains. Wendy's has fallen to third place while Burger King has reclaimed the number 2 spot. Burger King reported an 8.5% jump in second quarter sales in the U.S. Wendy's, meanwhile, says their sales dropped 7%, sixth straight quarter of declines. All right, switching gears now to the mayoral race here in the city of Chicago. We want to bring in our friend Jake Sheridan, a reporter for the Chicago Tribune, to talk a little bit about how influencers will be playing a key role in this upcoming election. Hey, Jake.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for being with us again. Great to have you back on. So, as this race really heats up and Mayor Brandon Johnson has yet to officially declare that he will be seeking another term, but you recently published a report where you've noticed influencers are starting to work with candidates. And we've seen this in the past, but it seems that it's only going to really kick into high gear. Tell me a little bit about what you've noticed.
Yeah, so, I think it's an early and an interesting sign in a lot of ways here. So what I found was that the mayor has paid a influencer, so far just one as far as I can tell, to post a video sort of supporting him, a friendly interview with him, a series of videos from that interview. And he has an official program for influencers on his campaign where they're working with influencers to push out these videos. And, it's interesting. There's a lot of nuance in this. This one person is being paid. There probably will be more for the mayor's campaign. But there are also a couple of other people who aren't getting paid, who are just doing this because they really deeply believe in the mayor. They're progressive influencers. He's a progressive guy, of course, and they want to support him. And I think this shows a lot of things. It's kind of a new lane of power for a mayoral election. We saw stuff like this in the recent congressional primaries in March. There was actually a dark money group that was trying to pay influencers to post some different messages, big money there. I wasn't able to figure out how much money these folks were offered or paid. But, I do think that we're going to see other campaigns do this. It's interesting, not just because it's sort of a new source of communicating with people. Of course, there are people on social media now. It's also interesting because it's a sign that the mayor might run. It's another point towards that. It's a big question everyone's asking. I'm looking into September, maybe if he's going to make up his mind by then or officially make up his mind. It's probably already made up. But this is a sign that the mayor is moving closer to running.
Absolutely. And that is, of course, the big question as more and more people put their hat in the ring for this race. You mentioned the money, the finances when it comes to influencers. We have seen this now for a long time, many, many years, where influencers, they're collaborating with someone, whether it's a beauty line, whether it's a restaurant, and of course they're getting paid for it. And you do always kind of have that question in the back of your mind is, are they really backing this product personally? And would they be backing it if they weren't getting paid? Similar question here, and you mentioned, unclear how much this particular influencer was getting paid for this post, but you do have to wonder, is it in the hundreds of dollars? Is it in the thousands of dollars? It will be interesting if we do find out later on down the road how much they're making for each post.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is really cool here is that they're required by law to tell us what they spend money on. So, in a couple months, we will have these sorts of numbers for this campaign and potentially for other campaigns, too. I was told by one influencer who turned down the money, Rachel Cohen, who's another progressive influencer based in Chicago, cares a lot about Chicago politics. that it wasn't a lot of money. She declined to say how much it was. She deferred that to the campaign, which declined to share. But so, she says it wasn't a lot. That being said, I think you're getting at something really important here, which is the question of disclosure. It's one thing for a progressive influencer who likes the mayor to hype him up, say he's so great, XYZ. But if someone's being paid to do that and you follow them because you trust them and they're only doing that because they're making money, that's a big issue. Mm-hmm. And I think that one way to get around that is to require influencers to disclose when they're being paid. Laws don't really do that. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they technically have rules that would, in theory, require influencers to disclose when they're being paid. But it doesn't really work. So campaigns kind of have to do that themselves. And we do know that Johnson's campaign so far seems to be requiring that. They told me they were requiring influencers to disclose. The one who was paid did disclose that. That's how I learned about it. And also Rachel Cohen, that same person I mentioned earlier, said she would have been required to disclose if she accepted the money. So, I think that's a big question. Are there going to be laws at the federal level, at the state level, that eventually require this stuff to be flagged? I think that's really important.
Absolutely, because like you said, it really speaks to trust. People start to trust these influencers that they follow, whether they have shared interests or otherwise, and then come to find out if they're simply posting something just because they're getting paid, there could be some issues there. In this case, just to kind of share to our viewers, the post that was centered around this article was from Becky in Chicago. She posted a video. She was interviewing the mayor, and she writes, "You're interviewing Mayor Brandon Johnson and forget what your next question is supposed to be." And the two of them kind of have a chuckle. But Jake, as you mentioned, then you look down into those hashtags, which I think is an important kind of rule of thumb, is just for everyone at home, look down into that caption. Look at the hashtag where it says hashtag partnership.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical thing. Media literacy 101 is the way we consume information changes. I hope you guys keep reading the newspaper and watching TV, but you're going to go online too. And, you should think about the things you need to do to make sure you're looking at things with the proper amount of scrutiny. And that definitely is checking the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen, wherever it is, to look for that paid partnership mark. Or if it's an ad, a lot of the stuff that we're going to see, there's so much money flying around this campaign, we're going to get flooded by ads. So, I think it's going to be really important to make sure that everyone takes things with a grain of salt when they need to.
And in your article, Jake, you mentioned too that this could potentially open the door to some misinformation. I think, both of us as journalists have had to kind of combat this on social media. There is so much misinformation going around. Anything that you want to share in terms of that point is that it is an unregulated space, and it can kind of open up this Pandora's box.
Yeah, it's the same things. The best thing you can do, I think, is to go to trusted outlets, and don't just read the Chicago Tribune. I sure hope you do, but go to multiple outlets when really important and controversial news is coming out. There are a lot of really hardworking journalists in Chicago. We're really lucky in the city to have so many different robust outlets. The best thing you can do is read across. Don't just take someone's word for it, especially when the incentives that they have are maybe to get more views or to just get a check from a campaign. And that's not to say that these people don't have valid voices and opinions. It's just to say they have incentives. For me and you, Casey, if we lie, we get fired. So the trusted journalists and trusted outlets, we have multiple steps of vetting. And I think that's a really important and unique thing that makes our work special.
Yeah, lots of checks and balances, but as you said, to your point, someone who's just kind of out there influencing may not have any of those checks and balances if they're doing it on their own there. Switching gears, before I let you go, Dr. Willie Wilson set to announce today at 5 o'clock why he has decided to run for mayor of Chicago. What do you make of someone else putting their hat in the ring?
I think the way we led our story, I saw this announcement. I just called Dr. Wilson, and I thought he would be like, "Oh, come to my event on Monday, see what the news is and tell me off record maybe." But he was just like, "Yeah, I'm running." And so we wrote a story on it then. And, what I make of this, I think Willie Wilson is someone who will continue to run for mayor probably. This is his fourth run. he's a really interesting candidate. He is someone who will absolutely get a solid number of votes. And by being in the race, he changes it. I think it's going to be really tough for him to win. He is not someone I think of as particularly likely to get the 15 to 20% that really gives him a chance to get out of a runoff, just because we kind of have seen how he performs. He's not really representing himself as a candidate. I don't think the city is really moving more towards him. He will run once again with some pretty conservative ideas. He is, he told me, he's repeated this in the past, that he wants to take the handcuffs off police. He is completely opposed to any new taxes, which means in a lot of ways that he'd be opposed to new spending on different social programs. And he is a kind of old school guy in a lot of the ways he views things. That's been a robust amount, that's gotten a robust amount of the voting population in Chicago to go and support him. He's got around 9 to 10% in each of the last 3 elections. It's really hard to imagine how that gets any bigger and how that gets big enough to get into a runoff. That being said, I think it affects 2 people in really important ways, 2 different lanes. First off, a lot of that support comes from Black Chicagoans. Willie Wilson is one of the first Black McDonald's franchise owners. He's viewed, I think, by a lot of people as an inspiration, as someone who really made a name for himself, made a ton of money. And he's given a lot of that back to the community in really flashy ways at churches or, of course, with his pretty iconic gas giveaways.
Yep.
And I think that'll continue to attract people there. I wonder how that affects Mayor Brandon Johnson and his run, because he's going for the Black community, too. He wants to pitch himself as having been a champion of the South and West sides and Black people in those Black neighborhoods in those areas in these last 4 years. I also am curious, because of the conservative ideas that Dr. Wilson is espousing, how that's going to affect people like lobbyist John Kelly and Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza, both of whom have kind of really led with their focus on reinforcing police as key parts of their campaign. I wonder if that kind of clogs the lane there. So sort of the left and right flank, Chicago specific, not a national left and right, of this race. I'm curious how those candidates are affected.
It certainly will be interesting, and you mentioned it, but our viewers at home will likely remember we have covered many of Dr. Wilson's gas giveaways before, where he has given away $1 million at a time in free gas. So he does have the money behind him. Last question for you, Jake. Why do you think Mayor Johnson has not announced yet? Is he waiting for a special day? Is he waiting for a big moment?
Yeah, I'm going to point out one thing from past reporting really quick. You're right about those giveaways. When I was an intern in 2022, I called Dr. Wilson, and he was doing all of these, and I asked him, how much money have you given away? And he did not know at the time.
Oh, wow.
The answer in recent giveaways was around $6 million.
He lost track. Okay, 6,
so
wow.
We don't have the money to run.
Yeah.
Right. But to answer your question, why hasn't the mayor declared? I think some people I've talked with, some, of the smarter campaign manager types across the city really think there's a chance he doesn't run. There have been some rumors that Delia Ramirez could run as a progressive candidate, but I personally think it's extremely likely that the mayor does run. And so the question for me is, why wouldn't he say that if he is planning to run? And I think there is a pretty good reason. When we're typically on Tuesdays at the news conferences that he holds, or when we're badgering him with questions throughout the week and we write our stories, are we describing him as candidate Johnson and putting him on an equal playing field with Alexi Janulius, with Susana Mendoza, with everyone in the field? Or are we describing him as the mayor? I think he holds on to the bully pulpit when he holds off on declaring, and I'm guessing that's how they see it too. He also gets to see kind of how the field lays out, that helps him refine his message. So I think, he kind of gets this advantage that we cover him more because he does have power now, and we need to understand what he's doing. Once he declares, everything he does will be viewed by a lot of people as coming from the candidate and not the mayor.
All great points. Jake Sheridan, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Again, that was Jake Sheridan, a reporter for the Chicago Tribune. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We will be back after this break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We are so excited now to be joined by our very own Devin Caney. Hey, Devin, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. So first we need to touch on another Bears injury. Talk to us a little bit about what happened with Luther Burden.
Yeah, so, he's just the most recent in a slew of injuries that we've seen come out of Bears training camp. Now, Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, they know that they like to practice physical, and they always say, it's part of football, it's part of the game. So it does bring into question, like, are they practicing a little too hard? What's the deal with all these injuries? But going back to Luther Burden, he's been having an incredible camp. He's really been standing out. He's one of, the top targeted receivers when the Bears are, practicing their first team offensive drills. So it was a shame to see him go down. Now, he was able to walk off the field under his own power, which is always a promising sign, because there are times when guys go down. We've seen that with a few of the DBs as well, Cam Lewis, where they have to be carted off the field. So Luther Burden went down. Turns out it's reported it's a groin injury. He will miss the entirety of the preseason. He is reportedly expected to return by week 1. So to me, this is I don't know if I want to say best case scenario, but I actually think with a player as talented as Luther Burden, and we saw him struggle with some health issues last season as well, it'll just mean that he's hopefully fresh for week 1, and you just hope that he can continue putting in the work off the field. If he's not out there practicing, he's at least going through the plays. He's at least continuing to get that playbook down. But it's still just the most recent in a long growing list of injuries for the Bears.
So talk about the other significant injuries, and we talked either last week or the week before.
I know, it's crazy. It was early last week. Kobe Bryant, safety Kobe Bryant, went down during practice, and he had has a hyperextended knee. Now it was kind of interesting because Ben Johnson made a little snarky comment towards, I'm assuming towards Adam Schefter and whoever in the building at Hallis Hall leaked the 8 to 10 week timeline for safety Kobe Bryant, because Ben Johnson, when asked about it late last week, goes, I don't know where you guys got that timeline from. So who knows, but you hope to see Kobe Bryant back out there sooner rather than later, because he came in and really just became a leader immediately, both on and off the field. So yes, that was early last week, which feels like it was a month ago.
Do you think Coach Johnson is just trying to kind of keep it close to the vest, doesn't want to reveal exactly the length of rehab if he kind of made that jab?
Yeah, I think a lot of these coaches in the NFL are very high on, competitive advantage. They don't want to give away too much information. So look, is it something to be optimistic about? Maybe he was alluding to the fact that we could see Kobe Bryant sooner than 8 to 10 weeks. Possibly. Could he be telling the truth in that, we don't know. He said they're still in the information gathering phase when it comes to Kobe Bryant. The promising thing is I've heard Kobe Bryant has still been in meetings. He's still, around that secondary. He's still around the safeties, including rookie safety Dylan Thieneman. So that's at least a good sign that he's still involved.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, this Saturday, first preseason game, and it's at home. You will be there. Talk to us about who we're playing and what we should look out for.
Yeah, so the Bears will host the Cleveland Browns. Now, this is the first and only preseason game that will be played at Soldier Field, and then the Bears travel to Cincinnati, and then their final preseason game is the Titans. Now, the first preseason game, if you can call any preseason games exciting, I always feel like the first one is probably the one where you're going to see the most starters, at least get some reps out there. Are you going to see any crazy, exotic looks? No.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be pretty vanilla, but it still is just a chance for guys like Caleb Williams, for not Luther Burden, but for Cole Kmet, for these guys who aren't strangers to the field, but to get back out there, kind of get their feet wet, because we probably won't see them play in the second or third games very much. So it's still exciting. It's still a sign that football is around the corner. Meaningful football is around the corner.
It is, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the weather holds up.
Yes.
We'll chat with Emily later on in the show. We're seeing some rain throughout the week. Aaron Water Show also this Saturday.
Yeah.
I assume they will coordinate a flyover at the game.
I hope so. I was wondering that. I would hope that maybe there will be some cool,
as long as the weather is okay.
Right,
yes, exactly. But hopefully we see a packed house at Soldier Field.
Yeah, we'll see.
And you'll be there.
I'll be there, and hopefully not reporting on any further injuries, because I feel like every single day of training training camp for the Bears, there's been another player or two who've gone down or left practice early. So fingers crossed for no more.
And you said that for folks who are going, they can expect to see some of those stars on the field.
I mean, regardless, they'll see the stars, whether it's on the sidelines or at least getting some reps out on the field. But with preseason, it's like a fine balance between, getting reps and getting practice in, and then also staying healthy. So, which, as we've discussed, is very important for the Bears to focus on at this stage in training camp.
Well, Devin, Katie, thank you so much for being with us. Always great to chat.
Thanks so much.
All right, stay with us here on Chicago Live. We will be back after this break. Before we let you go, take a look. It is a little gloomy out, but the sun is trying to peek through. We'll have weather later on. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Now to a very important topic to talk about ovarian cancer. About 1.1% of women will receive this diagnosis in their lifetime. That is according to the American Cancer Society. We want to bring in now Dr. Catherine Aird, professor and co-leader in the Molecular and Cellular Oncogenesis program at the Ellen and Ronald Kaplan Cancer Center out of Philadelphia. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Aird.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So today we want to talk about a study that examined fructose and ovarian cancer. Talk to me a little bit about what this study found.
Yeah, we were really interested in understanding what happens after tumors are treated with chemotherapy. Of course, we think and we want all of the cancer cells to die, but that's not always the case. And it turned out that the cancer cells that survive chemotherapy do something quite unexpected. They actually make the sugar fructose. And through this process, it turns out the increase in fructose that these surviving cancer cells made allowed the tumor to become more metastatic, meaning they were more able to spread.
Wow. So the cells actually in the body created fructose?
That's right.
Unbelievable. And
Yeah.
does this have to do with consuming, say, high fructose corn syrup? In this study, did you examine how that could play a role in the cancer progressing?
Yeah, that's a great question. At least in our preclinical models, we found that even high dietary fructose, which would be that, for instance, found in high fructose corn syrup, also led to an increased metastatic spread.
Wow. Okay. And how come the focus on ovarian cancer?
Well, certainly, this is something that's really near and dear to my heart. As you mentioned, although a small number of women are diagnosed with this, it's a highly aggressive disease. Unfortunately, the therapeutics that we use for this disease have been the same for decades. So we really feel like anything fundamental that we discover in the lab could eventually be really important for patients.
How long did this study take, and how many cases did you examine and include when it came to pursuing this study?
Yeah, research is slow. It probably took us 4 years for this
Wow.
entire study from
Yeah.
beginning to end. But all of this was done in the lab, right? So we used preclinical models, cell lines that we can grow in the lab. So now the next phase of the study is to really try to understand, is this happening in humans? Can we validate this? And what does that mean for patients? Are there potential dietary or other implications?
And walk us through the process. I know it was a lengthy one, so you don't need to get into all the nitty gritty, but the actual process in the lab of what you were testing, because we understand this was done on mice, not on humans.
Yeah, we use preclinical models, meaning exactly what you said. We're not testing things on humans. And we also can grow cells in culture in the lab, so completely without any system, any organism. And basically what we do is we test all of these different, hypotheses that we have. Many of them are wrong, which means we need to reevaluate, reiterate, and keep learning. I mean, this is the amazing thing about what we do in science is that we get to learn something new every day. And we basically put all of the puzzle pieces together and eventually identify what we think is happening so that we can publish it.
And talk about how this could help advance future studies, future cases, and hopefully research as more therapies become available one day.
Yeah, we're really hoping that this will allow us to explore not only other therapies, but also layering this idea of diet or dietary intervention into studies. As I mentioned, this is still preclinical, so we need to really confirm all of this in humans. But I think everything that we're learning in the lab does eventually lead us as a greater field, not just my lab, but the entire oncology field, to learning more. And the more we learn, the more we're able to identify new therapeutic targets or new interventions that might be important and useful down the road.
And then talk to us about, diet at home and how does that play a role in the spread of cancer? Particularly, let's circle back to, fructose.
Yeah. So certainly, I am not a nutritionist, and as I mentioned, since we haven't done this in humans, I would feel, I'm not capable of really providing medical advice about what we should do in terms of diet. But like I said, I think this really does have important implications for down the road, and really this is what we want to do. We want to try to understand whether those women that are consuming higher fructose in their diet, particularly with high fructose corn syrup, are more potentially prone to having worse disease outcomes.
And what are the current therapies for ovarian cancer?
Yeah, the current therapy is chemotherapy, followed either before or after surgery. And as I mentioned before, this chemotherapy is basically the same therapy that we've been using for many decades. Unfortunately, ovarian cancers are quite aggressive and they're quite resistant to many therapies, including the immunotherapies that everyone is so excited about. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, this is why it's so important for us to be in the lab, to be exploring basic biology. So we think that this may may eventually provide new therapeutic avenues to explore.
Is there anything else that you can share, perhaps any other studies that you are working on, even if you can't reveal too many details, but what else is going on in your lab?
Oh gosh, we have so many cool things going on in the lab. Certainly with this project, we're really interested to explore this in other cancer models, right? So ovarian cancer obviously is one that I mentioned is really important, but we think this might be more universal, might be more generalizable to other cancer types. So that's something we're exploring. The second thing is there's actually a drug that's already FDA approved for diabetics that can target this interesting pathway that we've identified. And so in preclinical models, we're exploring even those patients that get chemo or even those models that have high fructose, can we provide them with this already FDA approved drug and repurpose it into an anti-cancer therapy?
Interesting. And what drug is that?
It's called epirolstat.
Okay.
Like I said, it's an anti-diabetic. It's been on the market for many years. So perhaps we can repurpose it, but still a lot of work to be done.
And Dr. Aird, before we let you go, give us a little bit about your background. I see here that you have your own lab, the Aird Lab, and you're actively recruiting postdoctoral fellows. Talk to us about your background and training the next generation.
Oh my gosh. So, I always knew I wanted to be a scientist and did, the entire path from grad school, got a PhD, I did a postdoc, and then about 10 years ago, I opened my own lab. And one of the greatest joys of mine is teaching and training, the next generation. As you said, we need to foster people's scientific creativity. We need to remind them that this is, an important and really fulfilling path. I have, young people in the lab that every day I get to interact with. I'm a role model for, and they're then going on to do even bigger and better and more amazing things than I could have ever imagined. And so for anyone out there that's, interested in becoming a scientist, please know that, there's a whole world out there for you to explore, and don't be afraid of it. And we're waiting for you. We need brilliance. We need creative thinkers. It's an awesome, awesome job to have.
Thank you so much for being with us. If anyone at home wants more details about the study that you spoke about with fructose and ovarian cancer, where can they find it? Has it officially been published yet?
It has been. It's in a journal called Nature Aging. It's freely accessible to everyone. It's open access, so you could certainly Google it. There are also a handful of stories now written up about this. For the more general audience, if you want to learn a little bit more, you can find that through Google as well.
Thank you so much for being with us and offering us insight on this topic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. That was Dr. Catherine Aird. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. Pretty soon here, we will be taking you out to a local press conference where the family of a man who was shot and killed by police earlier this year is speaking out. They are now filing a lawsuit. We will bring that to you as soon as it begins here shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back to Chicago Live. A new lawsuit accuses a Chicago police officer of fatally shooting a man just 20 seconds after arriving to the scene. This happened in March of this year in Humboldt Park. The family of Derek Jordan now says his car was blocked in and other officers were trying to de-escalate the situation. We just started a press conference at the offices of Romanucci and Blandon. Right now, Antonio Romanucci, founding partner, is speaking, and the family of Derek Jordan is also here, and they will be speaking on what happened. Let's listen in.
Officers, law enforcement officers are supposed to do, and that's be public safety, not public enemies. Less than 20 seconds later, Derek was dead. Walzer carried out on his threat to kill Derek. We are now calling on Cook County State's Attorney, Eileen Burke, to investigate this case as a possible murder and bring charges, if warranted, against this officer. This took place on March 9th, 2026 in Humboldt Park. I could go on and on about the list of shootings and names of those killed or severely injured by Chicago Police Department law enforcement officers unlawfully. This list would be so long that it would consume this entire press conference today. But let me give you a little bit of history on how pervasive this problem is. It goes back not just to when Derek was killed or even when Sonia Massey was killed, but decades and decades. And how do we know that? Because in January 2017, the U.S. Department of Justice released the findings of its pattern and practices investigation into Chicago Police Department. They concluded that the department engaged in unreasonable and excessive force that harmed Black and Latino Chicagoans the most. This was driven by systemic failures in training, supervision, and accountability. And that's exactly what we're alleging in the killing and shooting death of Derek Jordan by Chicago Police Department Officer Walzer. Now, that investigation, those findings from 2017 led to a consent decree that is still in place today. Now, this is the world that Derek Jordan lived in. He lived in this world that Chicago Police Department was found to be racist and systemic and marginalizing poor people in underserved neighborhoods. So for Black men of Derek's generation, there is a very real understanding that one single encounter with a Chicago police officer could absolutely cost you your life. And for Derek, it did. And that's because there was a promise, and that promise was carried through. Officer Walzer came in unjustifiably hot to a scene where Derek Jordan was inside a car that was blocked by several police officers. They were on site working to de-escalate the situation while Walzer arrived at the scene with his gun drawn and immediately shouting multiple verbal threats to kill Derek. So this lawsuit, filed after the death of Derek Jordan and by his family, continues a devastating, decades-long pattern of deadly force used disproportionately on men of color in Chicago. This documented behavior by Chicago police has created extreme distrust and fear in our communities, and we need to reckon with this as a city. We are seeking justice for Derek. This family is seeking justice for their son, their loved one, and their brother. But they also mean to bring meaningful systemic change so this, once and for all, we can say, can stop happening. I would now like to turn it over to Senior Attorney Maura White for comment.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tony. At this point, I'm going to walk through the facts of the case that are captured on video, and I'm going to share some details of the lawsuit with you. But before I do, I just want to check in with the family and see if you would like to step out for this portion or you'd like to stay here.
I'll step out.
Okay.
What I'd like to say is that what we're doing is something a little bit more uncharacteristic. But because the shooting and killing of Derek Jordan was so outrageous, shocked the conscience of so many, we need the public to see what happened. If they haven't seen it, they must see what happened when Officer Walzer arrived on scene carrying through on his promise. This is not conventional, but neither is what happened.
Thank you. So on March 9th of 2026, Derek Jordan was driving a vehicle that was stopped at the curb on the west side of Homan Avenue, just north of its intersection with Chicago Avenue here in downtown Chicago. At that time, an unmarked CPD car driven by two plainclothes officers was traveling southbound on Homan when it suddenly crossed the center line, drove into oncoming traffic, and the officers quickly exited their vehicle in street clothes in an attempt to ambush Derek Jordan. In response to the sudden presence of an armed individuals in street clothes quickly approaching, Derek reversed the car and drove away. He traveled about a block and a half, then into an alley where a CTA bus on Homan Avenue blocked the alley. The unmarked squad car then approached and pinned in Derek's car between the squad car and the bus. The officers quickly approached on foot, yelling commands for Derek to exit the vehicle. Other CPD units quickly arrived on scene and further blocked Derek's car from moving. One of the squad units that arrived on the scene was operated by defendant Max Walzer, who approached northbound on Homan at approximately 5:41 p.m., according to his body-worn camera. At that time, there were several officers in street clothes and uniforms that were surrounding Derek and shouting orders to Derek to exit the vehicle, all done in an effort to de-escalate the situation. And I'm going to show a couple photos now. I just want to make sure that the family is still comfortable with staying here. Okay. So, step back. So, this is the first photo. When defendant Walzer exited his vehicle, it was clear, as this photo shows, that Derek's vehicle could not go to the left, to the right, backwards, or forwards. And it was clear that this situation continued to require de-escalation. However, Walzer quickly approached Derek's vehicle on foot with his gun drawn. The sunroof of Derek's car was open and tilted up so he could hear exactly the words that defendant Walzer was about to say as he exited the vehicle. According to body-worn camera, 2 seconds after arriving on scene, Walzer approached and positioned himself directly next to Derek's car, frantically screaming, "Get out of the effing car. I will effing shoot you." Defendant Walzer knew, or should have known, that Derek would hear him and be fearful of his life. He knew or should have known that he was escalating that situation. And 3 seconds later, Walzer screamed, "Get out," 7 times. And again, "I will kill you." These statements further escalated the situation. Next, you'll see Derek turned the wheels of his car in the opposite direction of defendant Walzer, and you can see this captured on body-worn camera. At no time did Derek Jordan brandish a weapon, and just 11 seconds later, Walzer screams again, "I will kill you." So just 20 seconds after arriving on that scene, Walzer fired 6 consecutive shots from his service weapon through the passenger window of Derek's vehicle. It struck and killed Derek. And you can see the bullet holes in the front passenger window of his car. And again, his wheels are still facing in the opposite direction of defendant Walzer. At no time prior to discharging his weapon did Walzer attempt to de-escalate the situation to avoid the need for deadly force. At all times while on the scene and prior to discharging his weapon, Walzer was in a reckless and uncontrolled state of mind that placed all those on scene in danger, including Derek Jordan. 4 days after this deadly and unnecessary shooting, Walzer was relieved of his police powers, and it's unclear if that was because of Derek Jordan's killing or something else. But the Civilian Office of Police Accountability is said to have opened an investigation into Derek's death. Derek Jordan's parents are represented by founding partner Antonio Romanucci, partner John Gorey, and myself. Ankin Law also represents Derek's parents. We filed this lawsuit on Friday, August 7th of this year, in the Circuit Court of Cook County's Law Division. The defendants include the City of Chicago and Max Walzer, individually and as an agent of the City of Chicago. The plaintiff is Christine Thompson, who is Derek's mother. And the lawsuit includes counts for willful and wanton conduct, both against the City of Chicago and also against Max Walzer. We are seeking a jury trial in this case. I'd now like to give Derek's mother, Christine, a chance to share how she's feeling, followed by Derek's father, Derek Thompson. Christine?
Hi, my name is Christine Tompkins. I'm Derek Jordan's mother. I have 2 children and was my baby. Derek had a family. He was loved. He loved his birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas of all. His birthday this summer deeply hurt me, and I can't imagine the holidays coming out without him. He was 43 and had a lot of life to live. Derek was a sweet man. He gave me a necklace, the necklace I have on, before he died, and I would keep it forever. I am a nurse. I care for others people, but I have been unable to work since Derek was killed. I am a wreck. He took my baby. I ask you, how does that person who killed my son sleep at night? How does he eat? How does his family feel? How can I tell you that I am not sleeping? I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, and my family is...
It's okay. Take your time.
Derek is my child, and he didn't deserve to die the way he died. I am sure my son was scared, but you did what you said you was going to do, and you killed him. God does not like this. I can promise you, I am not going to back down. I will get justice for Derek. I just want justice to be done. I love you, Derek. Rest in peace, son.
Okay. Mr. Tompkins, why don't you go there?
I'm Derek's my son. I love my son dearly. I have a hole in my heart right now. I have a hole in my heart that will be there forever. When this person killed my son, he killed me also. I just haven't laid down yet. Every day I think of my son. Every time I close my eyes, me and my son talked regularly, and he'd say, "Hey, Pops, how are you?" I'd say, "Hey, man." He'd say, "I know you want to be like me, don't you, Dad? You just, old man, you just want to be like me, don't you?" I say, "Yeah, man, when I grow up one day, I want to be just like you." And we'd fall out laughing. You know, that's how he and I kidded around. 42 years old. He had a lot of life to live. I want to understand. These people are sworn to serve and protect. I want to know, somebody just tell me who they're protecting, because it damn sure ain't us. Yeah, where does this stop? My son was a genuine young man. He didn't deserve this. He did not deserve this at all. I miss him so much every day. And yeah, but this is what happens when you put guns in the hands of irresponsible people. You put them out here, put guns in their hands. This is what happens. Innocent people die unnecessarily. Innocent people. My son hadn't did anything. I don't know who they were chasing, who they were supposed to be chasing, but my son had not committed any crime at all. They chased an innocent man down and shot him down and killed him. A totally innocent person. So I don't, whoever is hiring these people, I don't know the logistics of it, but yeah, it's crazy. It's got to stop. And I have a hole in my heart, like I said, it's going to be there forever. And this person, I wonder if he has children. I pray for them and him also. I pray that they can move, you know, just look, when they see my son, think about the son that you took away from us. The son, the brother, the nephew, the cousin that you took away unjustifiably. Yes. No one deserves this. No human being deserves this type of treatment here from people that are sworn to serve and protect. Who are they protecting? Who are you protecting? Because it damn sure ain't us. I love you, son. Your daddy love you, boy. Yes, sir.
We'll open it up for questions now for the attorneys only. Cody, do you know if the city's been served already?
Probably not. I mean, the complaint was filed on Friday, so its service will take a few days. But the complaint will
You were just listening into a press conference at the law offices of Romanucci and Blandon. The family of Derek Jordan just announced it is filing a suit against the city of Chicago and former Chicago police officer Max Walzer. Derek Jordan was shot and killed by Officer Walzer in March of this year on March 9th in Humboldt Park. The lawsuit alleges that officer escalated the situation upon arrival. His family argues that his car was blocked in and there was nowhere for him to go, also claiming that other officers had the situation under control when this officer fired his weapon. We've just reached out to Chicago police for comment on the lawsuit, and will also be sending a request for comment to the city of Chicago's legal team. As is protocol, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, better known as COPA, has already launched an investigation into this shooting. That officer is no longer employed by the Chicago Police Department, according to Antonio Romanucci there, the attorney for the family. We will bring you the latest on this situation later today at 5 p.m. But you just heard from Derek Jordan's parents, his father saying that this situation and his son's death has left him with a hole in his heart. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. It is just about 2 p.m. on this Monday. Our next topic is about state school funding. We want to bring in now Peter Hancock from Capital News, Illinois, to talk a little bit about the school funding increasing by $350 million this year, yet there is still quite a large gap. Talk to us a little bit about what you have found.
Well, what we're finding is that the states, under the state's definition of adequacy, adequate funding is a moving target. It changes every year because there are certain cost drivers that have an impact. And in particular, the revenues that school districts receive, both in property taxes and through other tax sources, is also kind of dynamic. It changes from one year to the next. So what we've been seeing for the last couple of years is that the adequacy target has been moving further and further out, while the regular increases that the state provides have remained about the same. And so in terms of getting all districts up to adequate levels of funding, the state has been slipping back, making negative progress for the last couple of years.
Explain to us more about the corporate and personal property replacement tax and how that has played an impact.
Okay, this is essentially a second kind of business income tax, and it was enacted back in the 1970s after the state phased out what's called personal property tax for businesses and corporations. That would be a tax on the value of, say, business machinery and equipment used in manufacturing. So this other tax, which is basically an income tax, had been going along very steadily for many, many years. But then after the pandemic, when we saw this period of hyperinflation, there was a big spike in that tax. And so a lot of local units of government, including local districts that receive that revenue, saw kind of an artificial bump. And so from like 2022, 23, 24, we kind of saw, a big spike in that tax receipts. And as a result, a lot of districts, including the Chicago district, moved up, got closer to their adequacy target. Then after after the inflation came under control, it started, evening out. There was a huge drop in that tax revenue because business income was not as robust as it had been. And as a result, a lot of districts lost money there and they fell further away from their adequacy target. So that's one of the factors that has been at play. The other factor, of course, is that just general costs are going up. Employee salaries are the main thing. Teacher salaries are going up. And other kinds of costs for supplies and equipment and other things that go into the cost of running a school district have gone up. And so this $300 million a year, which is kind of the statutory minimum that they add to the school funding formula each year, there's a big feeling that just isn't enough to keep up with rising costs.
And there's also some disagreement. The state superintendent, Tony Sanders, says evidence-based funding, that formula is working, but the union is arguing that it isn't enough to keep up with the costs. Talk to us a little bit about some of that disagreement.
Well, we're going into the year now, 26-27 school year was supposed to be the year when we finally got all districts up to about 90% of their adequacy target or better. We're nowhere close to that right now. More than two-thirds of the districts, about two-thirds of the districts are still well below their 90% adequacy target. So there is a push going on from teachers unions as well as some other advocacy groups that they need to up the the increase. Of course, the Chicago School Board has also been saying, because it's the largest district, it has the largest gap in terms of, just nominal dollars. They have been, really pressing for additional funding. And, but the people who helped push for evidence-based funding in the first place, and this goes back a decade, will tell you that $300 million that they agreed to was a very hard-fought, negotiated settlement. It's what everybody agreed to back then, and this was around the same time that lawmakers were also trying to resolve the, historic budget impasse between the legislature and Governor Bruce Rauner at the time. That was a very hard-fought negotiation, and they don't want to be the ones to break the agreement. They say, we agreed to $300 million a year, and that's what we're going to stick with for the time being.
Peter, one last question for you. Is there a realistic path to closing that $6.8 billion gap? It seems that is going to be quite a long road to bringing that closer together.
Well, if the current adequacy target, if it were to remain static for the next several years, at this pace, adding $300 million a year, it would take about 14 years to reach full adequacy, for all school districts. Wow. So it is a long way off. And so I think the pressure is building, and you've been seeing it more and more each successive legislative session. Pressure is building for the legislature to do something, at least increase the annual bump in school funding above $300 million.
Well, Peter Hancock, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Well, thank you, Casey.
Again, that was Peter Hancock from Capital News, Illinois. We want to switch things now to President Donald Trump. He is speaking in the Oval Office. When we come back, we will bring you the latest. He is talking about vaccine flexibility in schools. Hear from him after this quick break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. The time is now 2:09 on this Monday afternoon. President Donald Trump is announcing the signing of an executive order focused on vaccine flexibility and research. He is in the Oval Office alongside RFK Jr. to discuss this. Let's listen in.
The Last year, after nearly 3 decades, this administration reinstated it as required by the statute, and yet it was discontinued. And you restored that congressional mandate. The task force is already working to expand vaccine options, examine the timing and sequencing of childhood vaccines, strengthen safety monitoring, advance research into alternative adjuvants, and continuously evaluate risks and benefits using American and international evidence. Taken together, this is what gold standard science means. No predetermined answers, no institutional taboos, no sacred cows, no hiding uncertainty. Test the hypothesis, examine the data, replicate the results, tell the public what we find, and be honest. This is the standard you have set for this administration. It's the standard I intend to enforce at HHS, Mr. President. You asked us to get this done, and we are getting it done. And we will keep working with urgency until American parents can have confidence on the medical advice that their government gives them is worthy of their trust. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bobby. And Jay, please.
Today's a historic day for public health in this country. The executive order recognizes the plight of millions of parents across the country with autistic children. Autism is a very complicated condition with very heterogeneous, ranging from relatively mild symptoms where kids are full functioning to a devastating condition that fundamentally alters their lives and the lives of their families. You've heard from Secretary Kennedy and from the President their passion for the plight of these families, to see how we can help them understand the condition, to help prevent those conditions from happening in the first place. And what this executive order does is it orders us at HHS to take this extremely seriously, as we have been for the last year and a half and more of the presidency. At the NIH, what we've done is we have established the Autism Data Science Initiative, which started almost a year, actually more than a year ago, where we funded a dozen and more major research teams to answer the question of what is the cause of autism. It's a complicated biological phenomenon. It's not going to be a simple answer. It will have, as the Secretary said, potentially genetic predisposition, but that cannot possibly explain why we've seen such a large rise in autism. There must be some other environmental factors involved, and that's the basis for thinking that's driving these dozen and more research teams that are looking at this. The science takes time. It's very frustrating, and I know I felt that frustration myself. As a scientist, you don't get answers immediately. But the teams have been working assiduously for a year, and the main thing I want to emphasize that we've already accomplished in that year is we've changed how people and the scientific community thinks about autism. You've given them permission to ask the question that would otherwise have been difficult to answer. If you come to an answer that links autism to some other politically correct things, and you all of a sudden have this link, as a scientist, you fear that your career is going to be over. What we've done in this administration is we've given permission to scientists to honestly answer this question, to find the link for the first time. And with the change in the vaccine recommendations that the President has signed, what you have given is parents a choice, autonomy, a decision-making over how they want the vaccines given to their kids. I believe fundamentally that many vaccines are important. I said measles, for instance. The measles vaccine is important if we want to take control of the measles outbreak. But at the same time, we shouldn't be keeping kids out of school because they have made different decisions than other parents. Our European colleagues don't do that. A lot of the collapse in trust in public health has come because of these mandates that we've seen imposed during the Biden administration on the COVID vaccine and so many other things. What this does is it restores autonomy of families and parents to make good decisions for their kids. It allows and continues to emphasize the importance of science in recommendations about vaccines, and fundamentally restores a sort of healthy relationship between public health and parents, more in line with what happens in European countries than in the United States, where the childhood outcomes are often much better than we see here. It's a big first step that that builds on what we've been working on the last year and a half toward a a more sane public health system that sees healthy kids grow up without pressure, without undue influence, to make good decisions for their families and for their kids.
Thank you, Jay. Steve, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Because of your courage and leadership, Mr. President, millions of parents all over America today are breathing an enormous sigh of relief. I say this as the parent of young children myself. Millions and millions of parents feel they've been pressured when their children are just weeks out of the hospital to take 5 shots, 6 shots, 7 shots all at once. Their children will be normal. Your kid will have a fever of 103 for 3 or 4 days. Your kid will stop eating for a week. Your kid's going to change all their sleep. Don't worry, it's totally fine. It's totally normal. Nobody has studied it. Nobody's looked at it. Nobody's thought about it. The pressure from the pharmaceutical industry and from aspects of the medical industry to pump your kids full of shots days after birth with no understanding of the long-term consequences has been a medical travesty. This is an issue, Mr. President, that you have been leading on for years, and of course the man to your left has been leading on this issue for years as well, too. It's a really incredible moment to stand here today and finally see the concerns of parents around this country addressed. There's been so much heartache where parents have had healthy children with no issues. They know they've been pressured into doing things that they didn't want to do, and medical science has told them for years that their concerns are not valid. This order does 2 fundamental, incredibly important things. First is we get off of this ridiculous path of having our children get 70 to 90 shots. That is wantonly excessive. Remember, each and every one of these shots produces a profound immunological response. So across any large population, if you give a kid shot after shot after shot, you're going to have vaccine injuries. You're going to have immunological issues. You're going to have potentially neurological issues. Secondly, and so important to you, Mr. President, is the unbundling of the shot. Why do you need to have these shots bundled into these packages? Why can't you split it into 5 visits and give this young body, if a parent wants to do a vaccine, 1 shot at a time? Why is it that in Japan...
You were just listening into a press conference out of the Oval Office where President Donald Trump signed an executive order calling for more vaccine flexibility and research. This order will entail fewer childhood vaccination requirements, including splitting the childhood measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine into 3 separate shots. You'll be able to find more details on this on our website. For now, let's take a quick break before we bring in our next guest. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Turning our attention now to another police-involved shooting. This one dating back to May 11th of this year out of Mundelein. You may remember this story. 37-year-old Mary Alice Love was shot 4 times and killed by a police officer while she was suffering a mental health crisis. The Lake County Coroner's Office ultimately ruled her death a homicide. We want to bring in now a family spokesperson, Bishop Tavis Grant. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So, Bishop Grant, tell me a little bit about what is happening later today. We understand you will be reviewing surveillance video.
Well, the family has asked me, not just as a spokesperson, but as a spiritual counselor along with a pastor, to join them. This is a very arduous and very painful, traumatic time for them to review the video and the audio from that incident. They've only seen edited versions, spliced versions that were created by the police department to tell and create one narrative. We'll finally get to see everything that happened and everything that occurred on that day without interruption, without editing, and without commentary.
And they have not seen any unedited clips yet. You said they've only seen little sections. How much video do you expect to be reviewing today?
Well, we believe that we'll see quite a bit of video. We'll see video that, of course, was reviewed by the jury in the coroner's inquest. That was very telling to what was yet to come, because it was revealed in that inquest that the supervising officer that fired those 4 fatal shots into Mary Alice Love did not believe a taser would work. Now, no other officer discharged his weapon. No other officer discharged his weapon. And there's no evidence, even on the video that the police department released, that Mary Alice Love was attempting to hurt anyone, in particular her mother, who was in between the 2 officers and the supervising officer who discharged his weapon and took Mary Alice Love's life. We know from testimony that from the very moment they were invited into the home, they were welcomed into the home, there was no evidence of violence, there was no mentioning of violence, there was no fear expressed by the mother. So the video is going to be very telling and revealing. And we know testimony has already led us in to the direction of knowing that this was not the way it should have ended. Mary Alice Love should be alive today.
Bishop Grant, tell us a little bit more about Mary Alice. And, we know she struggled a little bit with mental health issues, but talk to us about the type of person that she was.
Well, I've spent time with the Love family. This is an incredible family with deep roots in Lake County, Illinois, in particular Mundelein, that they've matriculated in so many ways. I met a pastor, a faith leader, that actually helped and invested several dollars as contribution and scholarships for the family members of Mary Alice Love to go to college. Mary Alice was a very vibrant woman. She was a very welcoming woman. She was a woman that was
in 2 miles,
known
left.
for her particular means of being able to make people laugh and jovial and such. And this was a very difficult time for this family, very difficult time for the mother in particular. Mary Alice lived in her home. And for the crisis, the time of the crisis, you could hear just the angst and the desperation in the mother's tone and effect in her voice in that 911 call. You could hear equally so in Mary Alice's sister. She was so close to this family and had a closeness with friends and neighbors. What is so amazing is the day of the incident, of the shooting, of the murder, residents came out and were just absolutely shocked that Mary Alice fell at the force, the deadly force of that officer in that home. And it's painful. They have to, Mr. and Mrs. Love still have to live in that home. They have nowhere else to go. They're homeowners.
Use the left 4 lanes to keep left.
Living in those conditions, it's very painful.
Absolutely. Now, there's also been some disputes over the police response, how they could have perhaps handled things differently. Reports indicate that Mary Alice was holding knives at the time and was having some suicidal ideations. Talk to me a little bit about, how the family thinks this could have been handled differently.
Well, there's legislation back in 2012. You can do the background. Stephon Watts in Calumet City was murdered almost identical. Autistic child. The family was seeking help. They called the Calumet Police Department, and the police officer killed him on the spot. Killed him in that incident. So unfortunate. But there was legislation that Governor Pritzker, and we appreciate him signing that legislation that was driven by the African American caucus of the state of Illinois, where there are protocols that were created legislatively. These officers that responded on that day responded to a call that was labeled and termed suspicious circumstance. Well, if you listen to the 911 call, there was nothing suspicious about either call. Both calls were calls for help, assistance, and aid. These officers came in as if they were approaching someone who was maybe a hostage situation or a situation where there were weapons, there were guns, there was some act of violence. None of that is true. From the very moment you see on the video that the police department released, Mary Alice's mother gingerly, welcomingly invited the officers into the home and expressed to them she wanted help.
And Bishop Grant, we can't help but draw a comparison between this case and the case of Sonia Massey, who was 36 years old when former officer Sean Grayson took her life. Mary Alice, just 37 years old, just really seemingly similar situations. Talk about the need for more mental health resources and perhaps in law enforcement agencies. A lot of them are now increasing their training with responding to mental health crises. But talk a little bit more about this great need.
Well, it's a tremendous need. In both of these cases, these were individuals that needed the response team to have present from the very beginning, skilled, qualified, trusted, and reliable assistance readily available to immediately, number one, de-escalate. That's number one. And what is so egregious about this is the third police involved incident in Lake County, Illinois, which is just disproportionate as relates to what's happening around the state as a whole. So there has to be a new approach, new applications, and a new means by which police officers are not expected, nor are they given the discretion to use deadly force when it's very clear from the very beginning, someone is calling for help, someone is calling for aid. I mean, when you see the video, as we will see it today, and you can review even what the police department released, there was enough room, there was enough space, there was enough opportunity. In the police release of their video, you can actually see prior to the officer pulling his weapon, you can see Mary Alice Love stepping back from the glass door. she's stepping back from the glass door. She's not stepping into the glass door. There's not enough space in that kitchen for that type of movement. And so officers must be, and communities must be skilled and equipped to respond in such a way that we can save more than we have lost. What a tremendous loss to both of these families, and the similarities in terms of how quickly it was decided to use deadly force. And I, this is a family, by the way, this is a family that has been supportive of law enforcement. This is not an anti-law enforcement, defund the police family or community. And so it is a very unique opportunity for the community at large to be proactive and active. We've got to reinforce, invest, and provide additional training and legislation and public policy that afford families like the Love family to not have to lose another loved one under these circumstances. One should not be criminalized simply because of their mental health condition or the lack thereof.
Bishop Tavis Grant, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
You as well, and we look forward to hearing more later on from Bishop Tavis Grant after he and the family review unedited body camera video from that incident in May. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. Coming up shortly, we will have a check of the forecast. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Turning back now to a story that we first talked about at the top of the hour. A local man says he was sickened after eating oysters from a restaurant here in Chicago. He says this led to cardiac arrest, a coma, and brain injuries. This person has now filed a lawsuit against the restaurant. We've reached out to the restaurant for comment. But before we dive deeper into that, we want to bring in an expert, Eric Kopel from Long Island Oyster Growers Association. Eric is the president. Eric, thank you for joining us. So, Eric, you know, people eat oysters, as you know, every day. Is this a fluke incident, a freak accident that someone was this sickened, allegedly, by having oysters?
here today. Very much the case that this into the CDC data on food safety, it turns out that it's far safer to eat fresh oysters than it is to eat a salad. And we've got some fresh evidence of that just the past couple of weeks with the
And Eric, you're breaking up just a little bit. It might be the connection there, but what I gathered is that you said it's far safer to have oysters than it is some other produce in cases where there are concerns about other.
The oyster industry is of illness linked to vegetable consumption than shellfish consumption in this country. The shellfish farming industry in the United States is governed by the FDA, which dispatches the National Shellfish Safety Council to do monitoring. And then in addition to that, all of the states that have shellfish activity have their own monitoring agencies. According to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which oversees our production in New York, there hasn't been an oyster illness outbreak in over a decade.
And what type of bacteria could an oyster carry that would lead to some type of sickness, if the oyster is not, cleaned properly before serving?
The pathogens that you will hear about are novavirus and salmonella. These typically happen when oysters have been harvested and not immediately chilled. And again, we're heavily regulated, so the usual cause is that the oysters have been properly harvested, turned over to distribution, and at some point between distribution and the plate, the oysters weren't properly handled, and so there can be some contamination there.
Any telltale signs when people are at a restaurant and they order oysters, or perhaps they're out shopping at a fish market and they purchase some to take home? Any telltale signs that maybe these oysters aren't the most fresh?
Yeah, for sure. If you're at a fish market, make sure your oysters are tightly closed, and when you tap them on the counter or any other hard surface, make sure that they stay closed and they don't gap. If you're in a restaurant, the oysters should be sitting in a sea of liquid. We call that liquor, and they should smell fresh like the sea. If they're dry or if they don't smell like something you'd want to put in your mouth, don't put them in your mouth. There's probably something wrong at that point.
And should anyone avoid oysters?
Yes, the CDC recommends that women who are pregnant and folks with immunocompromise should be careful about eating oysters.
And one last question before we let you go, Eric. I imagine that fried oysters, that's a totally different situation because they're cooked. Do those not carry the same potential for bacteria?
Sure. As with any food, when you cook it, you reduce the chance that there's any kind of pathogen in the food that might disrupt your digestive system.
And Eric, what's the best season for oysters?
Well, out here on Long Island, my favorite season starts in about September and runs through February. Oysters don't really hibernate, but they do kind of go to sleep over the winter time. And so in the fall, they stock up and they get fat. And that makes the oysters really tremendous from late fall all the way through early springtime.
Okay. Before we let you go, give us kind of a day-to-day, what you do on a typical day, especially in a busy season coming up.
Well, today I'm running deliveries, so I'm in my truck. Got a full load of oysters in the back. I'm currently at the Cold Spring Harbor Fish Hatchery just east of Oyster Bay, Long Island, and I'll be out on the far eastern end of the island by the time we hit darkness around 8 o'clock tonight. So it's all about deliveries, and then my family's out on the water tending to the oysters and taking care of them. And I'll put in a plug for a Chicago restaurant. I was out there a couple weeks ago and had some great oysters, even though they weren't New York oysters. They were still very good at Gibson's.
Okay, and talk to me a little bit about the comparison between East Coast oysters and oysters from other parts of the country.
Yeah, so all the oysters that grow up and down the east coast of North America are the same breed of oysters. So the difference between a Wellfleet up in Massachusetts and a Peconic oyster from down here in Long Island is really the conditions in the water and the bay bottom where they're grown that will impart a different sort of flavor profile and experience. On the West Coast, those are called Giga oysters, which is a slightly different breed. They tend to have a little bit more of a watermelon note and to be a little less briny than an East Coast oyster.
Thank you so much, Eric, for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Eric Kopel joining us from the East Coast. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. Before we go to break, let's take a couple of looks outside. It's starting to get really gloomy out there. The sun was trying to peek through earlier today, but it is pretty foggy out there. Stay with us. Emily will be joining us in about 50 minutes to talk about the forecast for the rest of the week. Big weekend coming up with the Air and Water Show. We'll find out what we can expect. Stay right here. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We want to check in with one of our reporters who is out in the field preparing his report for 4 and 5 p.m. Let's bring in our very own Brett Bagansky. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Casey, how's it going? So this has been something on social media that has been taken off here about this report on ICE activity here in East Chicago. And just within the last few minutes, I was able to get a first name of one of the people who got detained by ICE earlier today, working on the last name. But we are told that there's been at least 2 people who were detained early this morning in East Chicago. The first incident happened outside of this Dunkin' here off of Indianapolis Boulevard in downtown East Chicago. Just to give you insight of where this is, it's near the old Casablanca. You're about a block from East Chicago City Hall, and you're right by Harrison Elementary. In fact, the second ICE incident that happened was at the BP gas station, and that's directly across from Harrison Elementary School. And I'm told that there were several kids and parents and faculty members who witnessed the second ICE incident. So this is a potentially traumatic situation for so many people. And there's still so many unanswered questions about the 2 people who were detained, why they were being detained. Was there probable cause? Did they have a warrant? Did they have a criminal record? What was the reason behind this? And number 2, where are they right now? Because in so many of these ICE incidents that we've been reporting here on Fox Chicago, there's sort of this mystery of they're detained. Who are they? Who are the people who detained them? Because a lot of the times they're people wearing ICE uniforms, but they have their faces covered. We don't know their identities, but we also don't know where these people are being taken at this time. So it is a very serious and scary time for so many people here. And keep in mind the makeup of East Chicago, from what Councilmember Robert Garcia described to me. He said it's about 55 to 60% Hispanic. So for some people who witnessed this today and some people who had seen some of the ICE activity here, they feel like they have a target on their back, and some, just from their perspective, they feel like ICE may go after them simply because of the color of their skin.
Yeah, and Brett, it hasn't been talked about as much in the last 9 months or so, 6 to 9 months, but there are still individuals being detained at the Broadview ICE facility and other ICE facilities in the area. Have you heard at all from any community members today who, they are concerned? We are getting back to that back to school time, where, as you mentioned, kids will be walking to and from class, which tends to be, a point of concern for a lot of these families.
That's exactly why they thought today was so significant, because there was some ICE activity last year. It sort of died down toward the end of the year, but now that today was the first day of school here, and there is a prominent elementary school in the downtown area, and because of the ethnic makeup of East Chicago, so many I spoke to here, whether it be on camera or off camera, said there's a reason that they picked today. It's because it's the first day of school. There hasn't been activity in a while, and they feel like so many people have a target on their back. Now, we still got to get the side of the story from Department of Homeland Security. We have reached out to them to find out 2 people who were detained, why they detained them, where they're at right now. But there's certainly now, with the first day of school, and this happened right outside of an elementary school, there brings a lot of fear because you've got dismissal time pretty much right around now, and some people look at what happened here and they may be afraid to walk out their door or even go to work, go to school. And this happens in front of the faculty, it happens in front of kids. They may look at that and say, what if that's my father? What if that's my mother? What if that's my uncle or aunt where this is happening to? And this is the kind of stuff that keeps people very, very unsettled and they're on edge.
And we understand, too, that you have some photos that will be included in your report.
Not only pictures, but some videos of some of the ICE activity. One specifically that happened outside the Dunkin', and the one that happened outside the BP gas station here. And with the one with the BP gas station, why that one was so significant was, number one, it happened outside of an elementary school. Number 2, there were at least 2 people in the pickup truck, from what I was told by by Robert Garcia, city councilman of East Chicago, is that these 2 guys just got done working out. They were just going to get some gas, and before they knew it, ICE agents were surrounding them. And then once they took the man away, the truck was there. It was left there. When we passed by the truck when we got here just after noon, the truck was gone. But for hours, that truck was just left basically on with the doors open and they just left it there. So it was a very unusual circumstance for so many people who would witness what happened earlier today.
Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We know you are busy getting ready for 4 and 5 o'clock. Viewers can check out Brett's story there. Thank you, Brett.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks. All right, stay with us here on Chicago Live. Coming up soon, we will be chatting with the head football coach at Stevenson High School. The school was chosen to host the Bears during a special practice at the school stadium. We'll be chatting with him coming up shortly. Here's a look at the skyline. Beautiful day, a little foggy. We'll get a check of the weather coming up. Welcome back to Chicago Live. It is going to be a busy weekend here in Chicago, and you may hear some roars way up above, not just later this week, but even today. The Thunderbirds were spotted practicing. We heard them in the Fox 32 newsroom about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. Official practice for the Chicago Air and Water Show is set for Friday. Of course, the weather may complicate things later this week, but we will discuss all of that with our chief meteorologist, Emily Walls, coming up in a bit. Right now, you're taking a live look at the Bean along with Millennium Park, Pritzker Pavilion. It is looking like a nice day out there, but just a little bit cloudy, a little bit overcast. The sun was trying to shine through more today, but it's kind of a slow day out there. Here's a really foggy shot from one of our expressway cams. So we will chat with Emily later on about, what we expect for Air and Water Show weekend. Of course, a lot of people come to the city for this weekend. It is a completely free show. As long as you head to any of the beaches, you head to the lakefront, it is completely free. Ticketed events, those are at restaurants, at bars, at private events along the lakefront that you can also enjoy. But the Air and Water Show rehearsal, once again, will be this Friday. The Air and Water Show itself is Saturday and Sunday, starting at 10:30 a.m., ending at 3 p.m. They typically start with the water portion there and then turn things over to the skies, going back and forth a little bit between the air and the water portions of this exciting event. The U.S. Navy Blue Angels were actually set to headline this year. The Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds alternate each year, but the Blue Angels had a conflict, so it will be the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. Once again, we saw them out here last year performing for the Air and Water Show. They will be back with us again this year. Okay, so coming up the rest of the show, we'll just break things down here for you. We will be chatting with the coach of Stevenson High School's football team. We mentioned it to you before our last break, but the school was chosen to host the Varsity Bears. This is a special annual off-site training camp event hosted by the organization. The team travels to a local high school campus. This year, they have selected Stevenson High School. They hold an open public walkthrough practice for local fans. Tickets are unfortunately already sold out for this event, but we will be chatting with the coach here coming up in just a little bit about what an amazing opportunity it is for the school, for the students as they prepare to head back to class, but to host the Chicago Bears. So we've got that coming up. We'll also be chatting with an expert about mapping Lake Michigan. This person comes from the Illinois State Geological Survey Society, and he is a principal investigator there, and he will be explaining to us what goes into mapping the floor of Lake Michigan, why this is important, why this is significant, and how much more work still needs to be done. And Illinois has made the list of top 20 best states to live in. We rank number 18th. Number 1 is Idaho. Number 2, New Jersey. And number 3, our neighbor to the north, Wisconsin. We'll be chatting with our friend at Wallet Hub, Chip Lupo, to break this all down because a lot of different factors went into this, including crime, including walkability, restaurants, etc. But the good news is Illinois did make that top 20 list. We're not toward the top, we're at 18, but we'll break down what exactly went into that. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We will be back after the break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. The time is just about 3 p.m. on this Monday afternoon. We all know Chicago Bears training camp is underway, but this morning they paid a special visit to one local high school. We want to introduce now the head coach of Stevenson's football team, Coach Brenton Becker. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit, how was Stevenson selected to be part of the Varsity Bears event today?
Well, I know that the Bears have done some community service events similar to this, but it's been a few years since they did one. And I know that they reached out to our athletic director, Mr. Bates, and he was certainly excited to make it work. And it was a great thing for our kids, our community, our school. It was a lot of fun.
And so tell us a little bit about how it went this morning. They did a walkthrough practice. The public could attend. I bet it was a packed house.
Yeah, a packed house for sure. It had kind of a Friday Night Lights feel. You know, we packed the stadium. It was a lot of fun. Our kids got here a little bit early. They were fortunate enough to be part of kind of a tunnel that the Bears came through, and they really got a kick out of that. We were able to include our flag football team, our drum line, our cheer, our Poms, our Patriots. It was a really cool event.
That's so funny. I literally just last night watched Friday Night Lights. I'd seen it many years ago, but I just rewatched it last night. And it really does get you into the spirit for football season. What are your players excited for? I'm sure that this was a little bit of inspiration, excitement ahead of their own season.
Yeah, I think it was really cool for them. You know, they look up to these players, of course. You know, most of them are Bears fans, you know, being here in the Chicagoland area. And so it was very cool to be a little more up close and personal. They got to interact with the players a little bit, and it was just a really cool event for them. So I'm looking forward to a spirited practice from our guys this afternoon.
And today during this walkthrough, were the Bears on the field and your players were, you know, in the stands and on the side? Or was there any, I know this is tough, but was there any interaction between the Bears and your team? Could they kind of throw the ball to each other today?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. You know, we the Bears certainly had control of the space, but we were in the end zone, had a space for our kids. And I know that Rome Adunze and Montez Sweat, they came over and interacted with the kids, did some autographs. Rome played catch with them back and forth a little bit. So there was definitely some interaction, and it was cool for our kids to see that.
And what are you most excited for your own football season?
Well, we're just about 2 weeks away from a game. Next Friday night, we open up just like everybody else in the state of Illinois. And so our time is getting short. So we're really excited to finish up these last 2 weeks of practice and see what we can accomplish with our kids.
And I see that you have more than 20 years of coaching experience. Talk to us about where you got your start.
Yeah, so it's, you know, the game of football is just an amazing game, and I haven't ever been able to walk away from it. I don't think I will be able to. I'm passionate about it, and I think I was telling somebody this morning, it's been such a good game for me, and you know, so I think that the biggest thing that's most important to me is to try and give back and create that experience for our kids. I got started, I played after high school, played at Knox College, coached a couple of different places in college, and then got back into the high school game. So like most coaches move around and do some different things, but we're in a great spot right here, and this will be my last stop.
Yeah. What do you instill in your players, not on the field, but off the field, in terms of, you know, up here in the mind?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things for coaches, high school football coaches specifically, you know, trying to make sure that these kids have a positive experience. And, you know, our mission statement is to try to teach life lessons through the game of football. And I think there's no better teacher out there than sports in general, but, you know, football specifically can teach these kids about discipline, being part of something bigger than themselves, you know, being selfless, leadership opportunities. There's a lot to gain by playing the game.
And Stevenson has produced some great athletes. Talk a little bit about the athletic department as a whole there.
Yeah, we've had some incredible athletes come through. We've got a couple of football players that are playing in the NFL right now, Aiden O'Connell and Mumajang Mehta. And then, I know Jalen Brunson has gotten a lot of publicity. Obviously had an incredible season here, winning the title and being MVP. But yeah, we've had some incredible athletes come through outside of that group of kids, and they're just a real blessing to work with.
Thank you so much for your time. Anything else that you want to share with our viewers?
I just think it was a great event. We're looking forward to a great Chicago season, and bear down.
All right. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Chicago Live. Stay with us. The time is just about 3:05. We will be right back with more. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Turning now overseas, there was a powerful 7.2 magnitude earthquake that struck Western Colombia on Monday. Here is a live look at Bogota. You can't see any damage there. However, this earthquake did take the lives of 111 people, damaging hundreds of buildings and leaving many people trapped under debris. We have heard heard that a lot of homes were absolutely destroyed. It was a 7.4 magnitude earthquake, again, striking Western Colombia today. We do know dozens of people have been injured. An emergency has been declared to expedite funding and recovery efforts for those who have been affected. Again, you're taking a live look at Bogota. Can't see really any damage in this image. However, again, 111 people lost their lives and dozens of others have been injured. Turning now to today's stock market, let's take a look at how the market is doing today. The market just closed about 10 minutes ago. Looks like it slid today, down about 60 points. And this is because of rising oil prices, according to stock market reports. So certainly down today. We will continue to monitor this in the days ahead. All right, our next guest is coming to us to talk about mapping Lake Michigan. We want to bring in now Mitch Barklage, principal investigator with the Illinois State Geological Survey. Thank you so much for being here, Mitch.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, so just to start, explain to our viewers what this means. What is mapping Lake Michigan? What does it entail?
Yeah, so this project started back in 2023 with an effort to map the volume of sand along the coast. And we've extended that survey now offshore, almost 15 miles offshore downtown Chicago. And we're using a new technology known as a uncrewed surface vessel, a Drix H8 boat. And this is an autonomous vessel that cruises around Lake Michigan and acquires seismic data.
And you said it's unmanned. Okay, there's a picture of it. It's unmanned. What exactly does it do to, to map all of this out? What's the technology in it? Is it sonar technology? And is that, Mitch, are we looking at the Chicago skyline way in the distance there in that picture?
That's right. That's the Chicago skyline in the background. Excuse me. This picture was taken last week.
Okay.
From the south side of Chicago, down near Crawley Shipyard. And the way this instrument works is we send a sonar signal, and it's a relatively low frequency sonar signal that sweeps through a range of frequencies. That signal travels through the water. It encounters the bottom of the lake, and it penetrates the bottom of the lake. And some of that energy reflects off the different layers of rocks and sediment on the bottom of the lake, and then is recorded by our antenna on the boat there. And we can measure the depth to the different layers of rocks and sediment on the lake bottom.
How much of it have you been able to complete so far? And when did the project officially start?
So we started the project last week on Monday, and we finished this weekend, and we actually acquired double the amount of data that we expected due to the operational efficiency of using this uncrewed surface vessel.
Oh, wow. And now, how much of the lake did you do? Are you saying you did the whole lake?
No, we did a portion from roughly about Evanston in the north to down to the Illinois-Indiana border in the south, and we went as far offshore about 15 miles.
Okay, very cool. Talk to us about the significance of this study and why it is important to map out the floor of Lake Michigan.
Yeah, so we see this as the framework for future developments on the lake bottom. So if we want to build future developments, casinos, and lake fills, we need to know information about the lake bottom. Future alternative energy developments such as wind farms and things like that need to know the depth to the bedrock to put those pilings in to make sure that they're stable. And additionally, we're interested in just unraveling the geologic history of this area. We know that around 8,000 years ago, lake levels were much lower. They were 10 to 12 miles further east of where they are now. And we know that there are old forests, submerged tree beds out in these locations. And so we want to unravel the geologic history of the lake and the lake level.
You said you got double the data that you expected, that you had set out to get. Did anything surprise you about the information that you were able to gather over this period of time?
Yeah, we're seeing some really interesting features. There are a number of drainage channels from this period when lake levels were much lower, and many more than we expected going into this survey. And so we're really excited to try to determine the age of those channels and what that means for the history and the evolution of the lake.
Huh. And when you are doing this, that device that we're looking at, does it stay at that level of the water, or does it submerge?
No, it stays at that level. It looks kind of like a submarine, but it's totally autonomous. You see all those antennas and devices on the top there. One of those on the front is a LiDAR system that's constantly scanning the horizon for other vessels and other obstacles. Each one of the little black dots along the top of the mast there is a video camera, and this is all powered by a sophisticated AI algorithm. So if the vessel is cruising along acquiring data and it sees another vessel or an obstacle, it will stop and avoid the hazard and then continue on the survey once the coast is clear.
And when this is taking place, are you and other investigators in a room monitoring the data as it's coming in? Walk me through what's your process and kind of like what's going through your mind as the information is coming in.
Sure, yeah. So we have a control center set up at our office, and we can watch the data coming in at real time. So we know as the survey is going what the data quality looks like, if we need to adjust any settings, or if there's anything of interest that we want to go back and survey more. And so we did this survey with 24-hour operations, so working in shifts of 12 hours. There was someone constantly monitoring the vessel, making sure that it was still operating, acquiring data, continuing to conduct a survey.
So, recently we have covered a few different stories about boats that have struck some bedrock in Lake Michigan, and they have the boats have sunk. And actually, you mentioned, I think, Crowley's Yacht Yard, a company there that tows boats. They're based there at Crowley's. They've pulled these boats and had to tow them essentially several miles. But what the expert there, the owner of the company, was sharing with us is that a lot of boaters aren't aware what's on the bottom of the lake. And while these different underwater piers are on their maps, a lot of boaters are not super familiar with them. And you really have to be paying attention to the map to know if you're about to hit some rocks that are under there. Is there anything like that you spotted? Anything really peculiar that maybe you hadn't expected to see when you were out doing this?
Well, most of the lake bottom is fairly well mapped, and we were really interested in mapping the sub-lake bottom, so the layers of rocks and sediment directly beneath the bottom of the lake. And actually, the Morgan Shoal, which is a famous bedrock outcrop on the south side of the city that affects a lot of the recreational boaters in the area, was a hazard for our survey because this uncrewed surface vessel has a gondola, a large keel that sits about 2 meters below the base of the vessel. And we had to avoid the Morgan Shoal with our survey because it presented a hazard. If we were to crash into that, it would damage our instruments and stop the survey.
Absolutely. And that is in the last story that we covered just last week. The boater had struck the Morgan Shoal, causing them to sink. So, okay, I'm glad that you were able to avoid it. Tell me more about this device. Where did you get this from? Was this built by your team? Did this have to be shipped in? It seems like a pretty unique device.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique device. It's a fairly new technology. It was built by a French company called Exail. And this particular vessel lives at the University of New Hampshire. And so we shipped it in specifically for this survey. And so we can put that on a trailer and drive that on the back of the truck.
And Mitch, what comes next? Now that you've gathered all of this data, what is the next step in your research?
So now comes the task of going through and processing and analyzing that data and constructing our geologic maps.
Very cool. And anything else that you want to share with our viewers about this? Anything that people at home can do to better protect our lake?
Sure. I think, well, we're really excited about the data, and we look forward to sharing it with the public. All of this data will be publicly available in open information. We expect to publish these geologic maps sometime next spring or summer, and they'll be available for the public to use. And we love the lake. We love working there, playing there, and we encourage everyone to continue to take care of the lake and make it this beautiful place that we call home.
And Mitch, before we let you go, how did you get interested in this topic? Talk to us about, this incredible job that you have, and if any young kids out there are watching and want to do something similar, talk to us about, how you got your start.
Sure. So I have a passion for the outdoors and the natural environment, and I've always had a curiosity about the way things work in the natural world. And, I'm really fortunate to work for the Illinois State Geological Survey and work on problems on Lake Michigan, which is a beautiful natural laboratory, to work related to coastal erosion and sediment transport and helping preserve our beautiful beaches that people love to spend their free time. And I really am fortunate to do that, and I look forward to contributing more in the future.
All right, Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with us here on Chicago Live.
Thanks again for having me.
All right, thank you. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We will be back after this break. We've got a check of the forecast coming up. Let's take another look outside, though. Still looking a little gloomy out there. We have windows up here in Studio 32, so we can see that the sun's been trying to peek through, but just has not quite made it. There's a shot. That's our view from up here in Studio 32. We'll chat with Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls when we come back about what to expect this week, potential for storms, but also what is the weather looking like for this weekend. We hope that is not the case. What you're seeing right now, we hope we see much clearer skies coming up this weekend for the Air and Water Show. Stay right here. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Before we bring in Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls, we want to talk to you about some of today's headlines. Of course, on the minds of so many people is what unfolded last week on Thursday and Friday in the South Deering neighborhood, where more than 50 decomposing bodies were found in the South Chicago Chapel, a funeral home based in the South Deering neighborhood. These bodies were found in various states of decomposition, and the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office initially responded to the scene on Thursday afternoon after receiving a report that those bodies were not being stored properly. After they called in Chicago police and they investigated what was unfolding inside the chapel, they made a really disturbing discovery of dozens of bodies. The total number, according to the medical examiner, was up to about 56. And we do know that the medical examiner has created, a post for family members who are concerned that their loved ones may have been improperly stored. They are asking families to reach out to them. There's an email address that we have posted in our story from last week where they ask that you provide your name and some other identifying information about your loved ones. The coroner has begun to identify the individuals who were found, again, in various states of decomposition in the South Chicago Chapel, but it will be quite a bit of work in other cases, just depending on the various states of decomposition. Really just a tough story. Families are so devastated by this news. A lot of them say that it took them months to receive their loved one's ashes, and now they wonder if those are actually legitimate. It's a story that we will continue to follow as new developments come out. Now, there are some community activists that are calling for an even bigger investigation. They're asking federal agencies to get involved in this as well. Turning now to the weather. Let's take a look outside. It is looking really gloomy out there today. Here's a look at the skyline. You're looking at the Hancock building there. We are bringing in Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls to talk a little bit more about what we can expect. Looking out here at Studio 32, Emily, it is looking like the sun's been trying to kind of push through those clouds.
Yeah.
What can we expect, though, the rest of the day?
So we're going to be on the lookout for another round of strong to severe thunderstorms. So the sunshine that we're seeing, this is actually something that we don't want to see on a severe weather day because it could very quickly heat things up, give us a little more instability to work with. So the sunshine that's trying to break through right now, this is not good for us. Okay, so as we progress throughout the rest of this afternoon, this evening, we're going to be looking out for scattered severe storms. So very similar to yesterday and last night, the Storm Prediction Center has our entire area in a slight risk, which is a level 2 of 5, meaning scattered severe storms are possible. And we are stuck in this very, very stormy weather pattern. So it's not just tonight that we're going to be on the lookout for severe storms with damaging wind gusts, flooding concerns, hail, and even an isolated tornado or two could be possible this evening and tonight. So main messaging here, make sure you have ways of receiving severe weather alerts. But, tomorrow I'm starting to become increasingly concerned about. So the National Weather Service, or I should say the Storm Prediction Center, they've now upgraded us on Tuesday to a level 3 enhanced risk, which means numerous severe storms or long-lived severe storms are going to be possible. Now, the time frame for tomorrow, I think, is going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So it's a little bit different than that late afternoon, evening time frame that we're oftentimes so used to. So this could take a lot of folks, I think, by surprise, mid-morning Tuesday until mid-afternoon. And if the storms do indeed form into a line, that's what we think is going to happen, Casey, we could be talking 80, 85 mile per hour wind gusts with that. So, whenever we have...
That's scary, yeah.
Yes, whenever we have, wind gusts that are in that range, you're talking damage that could be equivalent to an EF0 tornado, and it's going to be on a larger scale because it's going to be such a large line pushing through. So tomorrow, I think it could be the heaviest hit day that we see out of this stretch. And last night, it was busy last night.
It was. We had a ton of pictures coming in and videos of downed trees and damage. People can't seem to catch a break.
We can't catch a break. And, flooding is becoming an increasingly larger concern for us, too, because it seems like every single time we get rain, We're getting buckets and buckets and buckets of rain. So,
Absolutely.
if you think back just to last week, actually, with all the storms that we had, remember how the tour boats couldn't even get down the Chicago River because the river was too high for those boats to fit underneath of the bridges. So, I mean, it's been to an extreme level that we've been seeing here. And the flooding concerns, that's going to continue because all of these shower chances that you see on the 7-day forecast, these aren't going to be your really nice, light all-day showers that are coming down. These are going to be heavy downpours associated with some thunder and lightning. So flooding is going to remain a concern.
So the big question, of course, as we gear up for the 2026 Air and Water Show is, are we going to have a show? It's not looking too pretty there.
Not looking so pretty. But here's what I will say. Saturday and Sunday, we're still 4 or 5 days out from this, so there's time for the forecast to change. As it stands right now, Saturday afternoon appears to be a little rainier than what we could see on Sunday. So if I had to choose the day to get out there and make my plans, I would probably lean more towards Sunday than Saturday. But Friday, I know you don't have the announcers and it's not the official show, but
it's the practice, which is great.
And you really can get, the whole experience on Friday. So if you are available on Friday to head out to the lakefront, Friday looks like we're going to be staying dry, and it might actually turn out to be the best weather day.
Yeah. We did hear the Thunderbirds in the newsroom.
Yes, we did.
Earlier today. Did you hear them again?
I heard them. I was still at home.
Okay.
And I had just put my baby to sleep. And they went screaming on by. So my daughter's not a fan just yet, but she will be someday. But yes, they are here, and they made their loud entrance, right?
I was wondering, too, because we typically don't see them this early in the week on a Monday, but I wonder if because of the chances for storms throughout the week, if perhaps they are getting their practice in when they can.
Right.
In the event that later this week doesn't look good, they've got to do these practice runs. Right. It's so important as they prepare for the show. And, the one benefit is they essentially were here doing multiple practices last year with the show, because the Blue Angels would have been the crew performing this year, but due to a conflict, it will be the Thunderbirds again. They typically rotate, but they're here back-to-back years, so they are used to Chicago. They were just here, but of course still need to get that practice in, so maybe they're just trying to do it when they can.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear them buzzing on by several days this week, because with so much rain in the forecast, they're going to probably have to alter their schedules on when they can get out there and buzz around the buildings.
So another big thing happening this weekend is the first Chicago Bears preseason game. That's taking place on Saturday. Another one that people need to look out for if you are attending that game. Just monitor those weather alerts, because it's, obviously we don't have a dome. So if it's going to get rained out, they're going to be at Soldier Field.
Yeah, just kind of make sure you're paying close attention to the forecast here. And I'll make a little plug here as well, because last night was a really good example of why we always say have ways of receiving those severe weather alerts, something that can wake you up. Last night, actually, we did have, now it's been confirmed, an EF1 tornado that tore through southeastern LaSalle County near the community of Ransom, just north and northwest of Ransom. So we had 90 to 95 mile per hour winds associated with that. Here's some of the damage that we were seeing associated with that tornado. And again, this came through in the middle of the night. That tornado warning was issued late in the 11 o'clock hour. We were on the air all the way, well after midnight. But that just goes to show you that Mother Nature doesn't care what time it is.
No.
So make sure that you have ways of, being woken up if your area is indeed in a tornado warning or any sort of severe weather, because again, tomorrow the main threat might not be tornadoes tomorrow, but we could be seeing 80+ mile per hour winds.
I mean, and just look at this video that we have pulled up. A few clips ago, there was a car. It almost looked like it was on top of that massive downed tree, like it had almost lifted and landed on top of it. And you just never know when it's going to hit, how bad it could be.
Right.
Here it's coming up here, I believe. Yeah, right here, doesn't it? It almost looks like the car is on top of that downed tree.
Well, and that's, that's the power of Mother Nature as well. These winds were spinning 90 to 95 miles per hour. Last night when I was on the air, it was one of those moments where you see something on the radar, you're looking at the data, and you know it's not good. Like your heart hits your stomach. You know that communities are going to be impacted by this. And last night was one of those moments in southeastern LaSalle County. Now there's another area that the National Weather Service is out surveying today. It's in Lee County. There's a couple different areas in Lee County. And for those of you not familiar, Lee County is just west of DeKalb County. So the Fox 32 viewing area, it goes all the way west into DeKalb County. Just west of DeKalb County is where we have Lee County. And it looks like there was the potential anyway that several tornadoes could have maybe touched down there as well. So we're waiting to hear that confirmation. But so far, it's just the one tornado in LaSalle that's been confirmed. But that is a very significant tornado, Casey, because that marks the 63rd tornado this year in the Chicago National Weather Service forecast area. And the reason that that number is so significant is because this is the record-tying number. So a few years ago, we had a record year with 63 tornadoes, and now we stand at 63.
And why, you know, to viewers at home who are thinking, this seems to be happening so much more, and a lot of these seem to be really down that same path, a tornado alley, essentially. Why does it seem that they are popping up more and more?
So there's a lot of different explanations for this. One, yes, it's been way more active here in Illinois. And once again, this year, Illinois is leading in the tornado count so far. I believe we're well over 100 with the tornado count. I'd have to check the exact number, but it's very high. But there's one thing, obviously, that we're active. But two, if you look at the 30-year average, the 20-year average, the 10-year average, you know, the tornado count is going up in averages. There's different ways you can look at it. One, becoming more active, yes, and climate change, global warming, that is going to play a role. But secondly, everything is so well documented now. We have cameras everywhere. Yeah. Everyone's connected by social media. So, you know, something else that we do have to make mention of is obviously when trees come down, power lines come down, if you have damage at your home, you know, the first thing that people do is they post it on social media, and then it gets to the National Weather Service, and that's how they get out and about and get this information to do these surveys. So I think just the fact that we have better technology, things are being more well documented, those numbers, you know, they have increased substantially over the last several decades, but you can't scoff at a number like 63 because it is way over the average.
Yeah, absolutely. And this right now is video from Rogers Park from last night. You can see a utility worker there trying to get the tree branches off one of those power lines there. So, you know, this wasn't just out in the suburbs. This affected the city as well. You know, we will continue to monitor tonight. You'll be on at 4 and 5, of course, and again at 9. The apps, we want to drive that home to really make sure that you have weather apps downloaded, including our Fox 32 app, and you're turning those notifications on. A lot of phones obviously have the built-in alert systems, but just to have a backup, a safety net for another app, like the Fox 32 app, where we are pushing out alerts in the event of extreme weather, because, you know, you might be driving and you see the clouds look a little weird, you're not thinking too much of it, and then all of a sudden you get caught in it, and it's scary.
Yeah, so these apps, you have the option of kind of how you'd like to receive your alerts. So oftentimes it'll go by where your location is at the current moment. So I know sometimes, you know, when you download a new app and it's like, would you like to share your location? It feels a little invasive, but, you know, on something like this, you want to be able to get your weather data for your location of where you're at. That's very important. So for those of you, if you don't have a way of doing this, go ahead, download our Fox 32 weather app, and then you can toggle on how you'd like to receive your notifications. We also have a feature on there that you're able to designate certain locations that you'd like to get your weather alerts for. So maybe, you know, you have a daughter or a son, your kids, your grandkids live somewhere else that's not where you live. You can also program those apps to be able to give you weather alerts for your friends and family as well. That way you can let them know when they have big things coming through. One more thing, I know I'm kind of up on my soapbox here.
No, keep going.
Things to make sure people are prepared for. You know, flooding's been such a big concern, a big topic that we've been talking about. with winds potentially reaching 70, 80 miles per hour with tomorrow's rounds of storms, we are no doubt going to see trees come down, power lines come down if those storms are able to materialize. But with the flooding that's been ongoing, stay in your home. Don't go out exploring to see the damage in your neighborhood, because downed wires, mixed with flooding is very, very dangerous, very bad. So just wait for the authorities to get there. And again, unfortunately, I think we could be dealing with, maybe even some widespread outages tomorrow if these storms do indeed come to fruition.
ComEd's been busy this season too.
So busy.
Working with getting outages back online. I have one more question before we let you go. Just to explain to our viewers, when there is a possible tornado, it takes time for the National Weather Service to confirm it as a tornado. They have to get out there, they have to survey. Just explain to people at home, why this isn't immediate, that once it hits, it's not an official tornado just yet.
Well, so there's a lot of different things that the National Weather Service has to look for. So one, when they get, a damage report, they'll send a survey crew out either that day or the next day to see the damage and how it's kind of been thrown about. Because, oftentimes when we have a storm system coming through, you can have straight line wind damage in addition to brief spin up tornadoes. So straight line wind damage, obviously all of the debris is going to be laying in one direction. To be able to confirm that it's a tornado, you need to see the pattern in the debris of it kind of being thrown about in a either counterclockwise, most likely counterclockwise fashion. Most tornadoes do circulate in that direction, but there's a lot of times that straight line wind damage, it can do damage that is equivalent to EF0, EF1 tornadoes sometimes. So, people, if they get their roof blown off, you're immediately thought, most of the time people think, oh my gosh, I've been hit by a tornado.
Right.
And it could be straight line wind damage. And it is important to know the difference for the National Weather Service, simply for record keeping, but also insurance claims as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily. Really appreciate your time and for sharing all of your insight. Let's take one more look at one of our live pictures outside. There it is. Not too many boats out there on the lake today. Looking a little foggy out there. Emily will have the very latest on your forecast coming up at 4 and 5 p.m. today. And again, of course, at 9. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We've got less than 20 minutes left, but we are talking about a story that I mentioned earlier today, which is where Illinois ranks in best states to live in. We'll have that coming up in just a bit. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We have just about 15 minutes left with you this afternoon before we turn things over to the news at 4 p.m. We want to talk about a new study that was just released, which ranks states in order of best to worst. Illinois making it into the top 20, ranking at number 18. Bringing in now analyst from Wallet Hub, Chip Lupo, to talk all about what went into this. Thank you for being here, Chip.
Oh, my pleasure, Casey. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So walk me through what went into creating this list of the best states to live in. One of our neighbors to the north, Wisconsin, comes in at, I believe it's number 3. What were the factors that went into ranking the states?
Well, Casey, what we did is that we compared all 50 states across 5 key dimensions: affordability, economy, education and health, quality of life, and safety. And we evaluated those with 51 additional indicators, and those run the gamut. Those range from housing costs, income growth, education rate, quality hospitals. Ranked them 1 to 50. And yes, your neighbor to the north, Wisconsin, did come in 3rd. And Illinois, again, as you mentioned at the very top there, hitting the top 20 at number 18.
Yeah, number 18. And number 1, we got to talk about this, Idaho. What is it about Idaho that has pulled them in at number 1?
Now, it's interesting about Idaho is because now this is a Pacific Northwest state that you don't hear a whole lot about, but Idaho has a really good blend of affordability. The economy is very good, and it's quite safe, and it's middle of the pack in education and quality of life. And I think if you the numbers closely of the top 5, Idaho, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, no one state is perfect. They do tend to have a weakness in maybe 1, 2 areas, but they're very strong in some of the others. But the common thread among the top 5 is that they all rank in the top 10 in safety. Mm-hmm. And that's key. And we're talking about safety. We're not necessarily just talking about crime rates. Now, you could live in a state where there may be cities or parts of cities that are best stayed away from, but we do measure things such as law enforcement per capita, at least the effort to try to maintain safety. But I think safety is the one common thread in all of the top 5.
And you mentioned that it's also it looks at affordability as well. I'm looking here at Wallet Hub's website at this study, and it shows that housing costs are the lowest in Iowa. Most expensive, this is no surprise, but in California. Illinois ranking somewhere in the middle there. Talk a little bit about how you analyzed affordability for the rankings list.
Yeah, now again, affordability runs a wide range of categories, and again, housing is one of them. It does include other things too, such as employment rate, which is an economic factor. You consider affordability to be things such as property taxes. Now, your house is only affordable as the property taxes, particularly if you're in an area where your houses happen to be paid off. The property taxes, that's one area where Illinois is 49th out of 50, no surprise to you, I'm sure. But cost of living, median household income is a key factor also, because while even though certain commodities like groceries or gas might be affordable in some states, if your median annual income is not very high, you're still paying out a larger percentage of your income on those items.
And you mentioned, too, quality of life. Is this kind of where park space, restaurants, other activities, is that where those items come into play?
Yes, quality of life. And this is the one area where Illinois fared the highest, 5th overall. And it does include things such as restaurants, bars per capita, which Illinois ranks number 1. Access to public transportation, which is key, particularly in states where you have large urban areas like Chicago and Illinois, where public transportation is not only desirable, but in a lot of cases it's an absolute requirement in a lot of these congested areas. And Illinois also ranks high in restaurants per capita, 5th overall, performing arts centers per capita. That's the quality of life, and that's areas where Illinois does very well.
And this is no surprise here, but I've got that pulled up. Restaurants per capita, as you mentioned, Illinois ranks 5th. California, New York, Florida, and Texas are all tied ahead of Illinois. No surprise here, though, but Alaska comes in last place with restaurants per capita.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Alaska is a sparsely populated state, and there are probably a lot of cases, there are probably supply chain issues getting into the state. So, I mean, unless your diet is heavy on salmon, you're probably not going to have much of a variety of restaurants in Alaska.
Absolutely. Chip, what else are you working on? We talked to you recently about best places to live if you have dogs. We know that you're always working on something new. Talk to us a little bit about what we can expect perhaps in the coming weeks if you're able to share.
Well, we do have a lot of related studies coming up. Our back to school surveys should be out already, and the best credit cards for students. A lot of back to school themes coming up, and we'll have some holiday surveys coming up, some financial surveys. And again, Wallet Hub is also primarily a personal finance website. We have tools.
All right, I think we lost Chip there. The internet's kind of going a little bit in and out there toward the end. But again, to recap, Illinois is ranking in at number 18 for top states to live. All 50 states were ranked. Number 1, Idaho. Number 2, New Jersey. And number 3, Wisconsin. Okay, we have Chip back. Let's bring Chip back in. You were saying, you were talking about what you were working on coming up. I do want to touch on something that you mentioned, because back to school season is here, and you did say that you will be working on some articles about, best tips for back to school shopping. I believe you mentioned. Talk to us a little bit more about what parents should know.
Right now, it's a survey. It's an online survey that we do when it comes to back to school shopping, and whether people are looking to spend more or less, and what types of items they're looking for, and whether your state has what's known as a tax-free weekend. Here in South Carolina, we just concluded our tax-free weekend for back to school, which waives sales taxes on purchases that are school-related. And it's a pretty broad brush because it covers everything from apparel to computer items, electronics. So depending on your state, you can save a huge deal on back to school. And it also touches on things such as financial literacy. Parents are more and more concerned that financial literacy taught in the schools and would like to see more of that implemented into the curriculums.
Wow. Okay, so Chip, I just looked this up. Unfortunately, Illinois does not have a traditional completely free, tax-free weekend. However, it does run a 10-day back-to-school sales tax reduction event from August 7th through August 16th. So for parents at home, just take note of that for about one more week. There is a reduced sales tax for back-to-school shopping, dropping the state portion, this says, from 6.5% down to 1.25%. Local municipal taxes still do apply, but that reduced tax period for back-to-school shopping is underway now and runs through August 16th. I'm glad you mentioned that, Chip. All right, I think Chip froze again. Always great to chat with Chip, though, about what he's got coming up, different rankings and such. As I mentioned, we chatted with him recently about best places to live if you have pets. Chicago, unfortunately, didn't come in super high in that study. However, we did rank very well in terms of green spaces and dog parks. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We just have a couple more minutes. We'll recap things coming up after this break. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We've got just about a minute left, but we've got to bring in our Tia Ewing. Tia, in 30 seconds, tell us a little bit about the story that we can watch coming up in our newscast this afternoon.
Yeah, so we interviewed 24-year-old Nalijah Abdul Khalik. She is a 24-year-old from Chicago, and she has this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to a school in Paris to study fashion journalism. She wants to get a graduate degree in it. They only choose 12 students every year. Her story is really about overcoming. She grew up in Roseland and was able to pursue this graduate degree. So we walked through kind of like what her vision was for herself and how she's going from a neighborhood that at sometimes is painted by blight and crime. And so how she was able to
From Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Right now on the news at 4, ICE agents are spotted in northwest Indiana. And ICE will soon equip every agent with a body